Glutathione. You've seen it everywhere, right? It's all over social media, it's in high-end beauty clinics, and it's all promising one thing: lighter skin. But what's the real story? Today, we're going to dig into the science and separate the facts from the hype.
So let's just cut to the chase and ask the big question right up front. Does glutathione actually whiten skin? It seems like a simple question, but believe me, the answer is anything but. And it's an answer that millions of people are searching for.
And there's a reason for all this buzz. We're talking about a single molecule that's at the heart of a global industry worth billions and billions of dollars. So that's why today we're not going to listen to the marketing. We're going to investigate and put the actual scientific evidence on trial. So where did this whole idea even come from? Well, you might be surprised to hear that the discovery of glutathione's skin lightening effect was a total accident. Yep, it was first noticed as a kind of weird side effect in patients who were taking really high doses for completely unrelated medical conditions.
Okay, before we get any deeper, let's be clear on what we're even talking about. What is glutathione? Well, to put it simply, it's a super powerful antioxidant that our own bodies make naturally. It's made up of 3 amino acids, and its number one job is to protect our cells from damage. You can kind of think of it as your body's own master defender.
All right, time to geek out a little bit and get into the science. How in the world does this master defender supposedly make your skin lighter? Well, the whole theory revolves around how it messes with melanin, and that's the pigment that gives our skin, hair, and eyes their color. To really get it, you have to look at this cycle. See, in our bodies, glutathione is constantly flipping between its active, ready-to-fight form and its inactive form. This is basically how it neutralizes all that cellular damage from things called free radicals. And that antioxidant power, that's the key. It's the foundation for this entire skin lightening claim. And this right here, this visual, this explains the core theory perfectly. Okay, so making melanin is a complex process, and it's controlled by this one key enzyme called tyrosinase. The theory is that glutathione launches a two-pronged attack. First, it directly blocks that enzyme from working. And second, and this is the wild part, it actually shifts the whole production line away from making the dark brown pigment called eumelanin and pushes it towards making the lighter yellowish-red pigment called pheomelanin. So the crucial takeaway is the claim that it doesn't just reduce melanin, it literally changes the type of melanin your body makes. Okay, the theory sounds pretty convincing, right? But does it actually work in the real world, on real people? Well, it's time to put the evidence on trial. We're going to look at the 3 main ways people use glutathione: popping pills, rubbing on creams, and getting IV drips. Let's start with the one you've probably seen the most, because it's the easiest to get your hands on: oral glutathione. We're talking capsules, pills, you can even get it in lozenges. So when you look at the actual clinical trials, the results are, well, they're a bit of a mixed bag, but interesting. For instance, one study from 2012 found a pretty significant drop in melanin on skin that was exposed to the sun. Another one used these special lozenges for better absorption and saw similar results. So, what's the bottom line here? It seems promising, but the results can be really inconsistent, probably because our bodies just aren't that great at absorbing it through our stomachs. But the good news is, it seems to be very safe, with just some minor tummy issues reported. All right, now let's see what happens when we skip the stomach altogether. Let's talk about our second method, topical glutathione, which you apply directly to your skin in creams or lotions. Now, with creams and lotions, the evidence starts to look a bit more solid. One double-blind study showed that a 2% glutathione lotion worked significantly better than a placebo over 10 weeks. And get this, another study found that combining the cream with the oral pills was way more effective than using either one by itself. So the general feeling is that for targeting specific dark spots, topical glutathione seems to be both effective and safe. And that brings us to the most hyped, the most expensive, and by far the most controversial method of them all: intravenous or IV glutathione. This is where the marketing promises and the scientific reality just completely go their separate ways. It gets dramatic. I mean, the promise of IV drips is so tempting, isn't it? Rapid, powerful, immediate, all-over skin lightening. Who wouldn't want that? But then you look at what the science says, and the reality is pretty scary. It's filled with a lack of good evidence, findings that any changes are temporary, and most importantly, really serious safety concerns. And those safety concerns are not just some theoretical what if. Let's just focus on one number for a second: 32%. In a major study on IV glutathione, nearly a third of the people in the study reported negative side effects. Let that sink in. That is an insanely high number for any kind of cosmetic treatment.
And we're not talking about a little bit of redness here. The side effects being reported in medical journals are no joke. Liver problems, severe allergic reactions, and even anaphylaxis, which can be fatal. A huge piece of the problem is that this is a completely unregulated off-label use. That means there are no standard doses, no safety protocols, which makes it incredibly risky. And hey, don't just take our word for it. These concerns are so real that government agencies have had to step in. The Food and Drug Administration in the Philippines, where this is a huge trend, has actually issued official public warnings against using IV glutathione for skin lightening, pointing directly to all of these dangerous, documented risks.
Okay, so we've looked at the theory, we've looked at the clinical evidence for pills, creams, and IVs. It's time to pull it all together and issue the final verdict. What's fact, what's just hype, and what's the real story somewhere in between? Here's how it shakes out. For oral supplements, there's some potential for a modest temporary effect, but it's far from a sure thing. For topical creams, they look like your safest and most reliable bet, especially if you're targeting specific dark spots. And as for IV injections, well, the evidence just isn't there, the effects don't last, and the health risks are very real and very serious. But through all of this, there is one thing that every single scientist and every single study agrees on. We just don't have enough data. We desperately need more large-scale, long-term research to really understand how effective this is, and, way more importantly, if it's safe to use for years and years.
Which leaves us with one last big question for you to think about. Based on everything we know today, is glutathione a proven skin solution, or is its massive popularity just a huge triumph of marketing over science? As we've just seen, the answer really, truly depends on how you use it. Thanks for digging into the evidence with us.